Hi, I'm Ray. Long time no see. Or, first time no see? Welcome? Fine, okay. Let's address the elephant in the room. It's been a really long time no see. Like, I swear to you guys, it did not feel like 5 months, nor did I expect this to be so long of an absence of mine. But, at least I'm here now. Hey! I can't touch upon the plethora of things that have happened during my hiatus, but there's one thing, or revelation for lack of a better term, that I can share with you guys. 3D modeling is awesome. Like actually. Is that what you expected me to say? Probably not. Was this revelation my initial thought about 3D modeling? Absolutely not. I mean, it's a revelation for a reason, but it still took me getting whooped by 2 different programs, and that's putting things very lightly. Like, I can't perceive the world in anything other than vertices, edges, and faces type of lightly. And you might be confused. What are you talking about, Ray? Well, let's have to do anything. Why the hell are you 3D anyways? All valid questions. To answer, 1, cause I can. 2, has everything to do with anything. And 3, if I draw another still of myself, I'll probably lose my mind along my right hand. If I hadn't spent too long making those stills, I could have gotten that video out a month sooner. You could argue that I could just reuse the same stills for future videos, but I kind of want to maintain some uniqueness as much as I can, at the very least. So I thought about what I could do for a bit, and it wasn't until I received a Google Classroom notification from my 3D modeling class that I thought, hey, I can just make a model of myself and then reuse that same one to make different stills, and the amount of times that it'd take to draw 3 stills would be cut down by like 80% in the long run if I use the model instead. Yeah. The 2 programs I can say I'm decently familiar with are Blender and Maya. However, since I'm currently no contact with Maya following the irreversible damages done to my psyche, I started this project with Blender. Then I fell flat on my face and then ended up with 3 different test models that would probably get me blacklisted from any art-related industry if I showed them to you guys. My friendship ended with Blender, and now I have absolutely nobody. So I trekked a lonely trek in search of a program that can satisfy my needs, and lo and behold, I found and lifted what could be our modern day Excalibur. Blockbench. Oh my god, let me tell you, this program has saved my life. This program is absolutely goated. Did this project come without its bumps? No, not at all. It came with a couple potholes too, but it was still the most pleasurable experience I've experienced so far. So, without further ado, here's how I use Blockbench to model my persona. Oh boy. Of course, before I even thought to start modeling, I had to figure out what exactly I was gonna model. As I mentioned before, I'm gonna be modeling my persona, and if you couldn't tell, let me help you out here. This reference sucks, and I was in desperate need for a new one. I don't even know why this one's so blurry. Oh my god! I was at crossroads deciding whether this model should maintain the style of my current persona or if I should make it more like low poly and similar to my video art style. So, like any normal person would do, I put the 2 options on the dartboard and I threw one haphazardly, and wow, would you look at that? Ah, shucks, what a bummer. I really wanted to do the high poly, extremely detailed creation of my persona, but somehow it landed on the low poly model option. My luck is just the worst, right? But I mean, there's no point of crying over spilled milk, so with that settled, I made a new reference. Not only does this reference exceed 10 pixels, thank god, but it was up to date with my current style. I made sure to emphasize some parts of my persona silhouette that I thought to be important too. Okay, fine, it was just a hair. I wanted the hair to look like those coral reef clusters. I thought it was clever. Okay, just let me have this. I will clarify, I had another reference that had the front and side view, and that's typically the kind of reference that you should be making when trying to translate a drawing into a 3D space. I'll go into detail why I did so later on, but always make sure your references have a front and side view. It'll save you so many headaches in the long run. So, with my references done, I began modeling. Here are 3 things I've learned about modeling. 1. Quads are your best friends. 2. Depending on what you're doing, so are tries. 3. Any face that has more than 4 edges should be taken out back and made into an example. When I began 3D modeling in Maya, it was incredibly easy for me to muddy the topology by misusing the program's tools, specifically the multi-cut tool. Oh, when I catch you multi-cut tool, basically when you cut into a face, you can find yourself stopping at just an edge. Yeah, I wasn't supposed to do that. By doing so, these would create these faces that have more than 4 edges, aka n-gons. Nobody likes n-gons. N-gons don't like n-gons. They hate themselves. Isn't that sad? In Blockbench, while there not be as much freedom or flexibility with the tools given to you compared to Maya, it is a lot harder to end up with n-gons. I don't think the program was designed to make highly intricate models. I think it was actually specifically for low poly models. And that's not to say it's entirely impossible too. It's just a good place to start if you're interested in learning how to 3D model and if your project doesn't really require too much, if that makes sense. Like, scope creep is real, and scope creep applies to so many things. I can't tell you the amount of times I've opened up a program and closed it 10 minutes later because of the sheer amount of things on my screen and the endless amount of possibilities. Blockbench is simple and straight to the point, and for my first time using it, it was so easy to pick up. When I make models, I usually start from the top to bottom. Not strictly, I just mean like the face, then the neck, and then the upper body, etc, etc. You get the idea. In addition to the body, I had 2 extra details that I took from my older ref sheet: the caution tape and the water wave shorts with like foam at the ends. For the caution tape, I settled on extruding the edge of a plane around my chest and down the right to the side of my back. However, from the side, it practically became invisible whenever I turned, so I made sure to move some of the edges forward to prevent that. With the waves, this was a huge struggle, and when modeling them, I had already finished the upper body. I'm sure you can imagine how tired I was, but if you can't, don't worry, here's a visual. I ended up warping a ton of spheres and shoving them together before merging them into one mesh. Is this something I should have done? Probably not. No, definitely not. But I wasn't really planning for them to be movable bones, nor was I going to texture them in like a really intricate way. So like, maybe in another timeline, in another world, I do this more efficiently, but for now, it's not a problem. And I won't treat it like one until it decides to become one. With the body, I realized that when making characters in Blockbench, it's important to model the individual body parts and then piece them together. This is what I ended up with, and here's everything sectioned out. There isn't a skeletal rigging system like in Maya or Blender, and bones are actual folders that you put your meshes into. While I could make, let's say, the torso into a singular mesh, I wouldn't be able to make it bend in the same way bones would be able to bend in Maya or Blender. So, to give it the illusion of bending, I separated the torso into 3 different parts. Lastly, a feature I wanted to add to my model was to have speech bubbles and a riggable face, which includes having riggable eyes, mouth, and eyebrows. I found the best approach to this was duplicating specific faces on pre-existing meshes and moving them forward so they don't clip into the actual face. However, we'll get into that later on, don't worry. For now, just think of it like those dolls you'd replace the faces of, and then when they got old, people would dismantle and use them as bowling pins as back in the day. What? Was that not a shared experience? Well, would you look at the time? It's texture o'clock! Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah, it says it on the clock right there, go look! Before you start texturing, you should probably start UV mapping. You know, selecting edges, marking, cutting seams, projecting to view, unwrapping, resizing, then coloring, all that fun stuff. Yeah, so let's pause, rewind, if you will. I mentioned that I remade my reference and I didn't exactly show the old version. This is how it looked like. Yeah, I know. While this helped me get the general shape of my model, it had not an ounce of color, and because it didn't, my first texturing run-through was, to put it very kindly, nothing short of a failure. Well, okay, maybe I'm being dramatic. It wasn't a failure.
This shit's ass.
This shit's ass.
This bloody blows.
This shit's
sucks. Terrible.
Okay. Maybe it was a failure. To each their own. For my second run through, I ended up redrawing what is our current reference, and I color picked the colors from there, only needing to occasionally deviate from the palette due to any new ideas I had. And guys, who knew having a colored reference was like a good idea? I mean, I knew, but I was just really lazy. You can add references to Blockbench pretty easily by right-clicking the workspace and then selecting the add reference option. You can then choose how you want this reference to appear on like your screen by right-clicking that same reference again and then choosing whether you want it above the interface, above the model, or behind the model. For this project, a lot of my references were above the interface and only the front and side view was behind the model. And this is as far as I can talk about UVing and texturing. Sorry? Again? The texturing part is so straightforward. You just draw. UVing though, on the other hand, is something I wouldn't, if tangible, touch with a 10-foot pole. And that's on a good day. I know my skill set. It doesn't reach very far. I know my limits. That doesn't cover much ground either. If you genuinely want to burden yourself with the knowledge of UVing, wander far and long for a video tutorial. I'm not your guy. I will never, ever be your guy. My UVs look like this because I was so unbothered with properly separating my meshes, let alone cutting or joining edges. If you want to be like efficient and unfun and studious and unfun again, look elsewhere. I'm not your guy. The amount of separate textures I ended up with amounted to around 47. Once again, my UVing process sucks so bad and a lot of duplicate textures were made for symmetrical parts of the model that simply didn't have to be made because I was lazy. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you and say that UVing isn't something you shouldn't learn how to do properly, because it totally is. It's incredibly helpful. I just hate that I have to practice what I preach and learn how to properly UV at some point too. Send your thoughts, and especially prayers. I'm gonna need them. Please join me in revisiting my original version of the script, where I wrote, and I quote, "Oh my God, I have to rig. God, take me. I'm ready. God, why? Please save me." My obvious frustrations aside, this is probably the most positive section of this video, and yes, I can't believe it either. If you don't know what rigging is, it's basically what makes models move. It's based on a skeletal system that's connected to controls, which are also connected to the mesh. Once properly configured, you should be able to move the bones and in turn move your models. The first time I rigged a model with Maya, I was beyond mortified, and the terminology did not help with that. I could look over basically shoving a whole skeletal system into whatever I created. I'm pretty sure whatever higher power up there did that to me as like a kid. But hey guys, hey guys, why is it called skinning? When I saw my vessel's poor body disfigure every time I moved the joint, and when the weight painting failed to cure them of their newfound purgatory, I couldn't help but think that this feels a little unethical. You know, just a tiny bit. But good news, there's no skeletal system, at least to my knowledge, and because there isn't, I don't have to research to avoid spreading misinformation, I don't have to solve any more dilemmas, and I don't have to skin anything or anyone this time. Oh, that does not look good for my optics. Oh my god. As I've mentioned before, the folders you place your meshes into are bones. When you animate in Blockbench, you can only manipulate objects that are placed into folders, or else they won't show up in the project's outline. They'll still show up in the camera view, but you just can't move them. Another thing is that folders can't be separate. It generally follows the same parental hierarchy as skeletal bones do, so I guess you can argue there is a skeletal system and I am technically skinning someone, which I'm not. I need to stop bringing up skinning. You're free to deviate as needed. All you have to do is move the child folder into the parent folder. For example, you move the arm folder into the shoulder folder, so that when you move the shoulder, the arm would follow. For reference, here's my folder hierarchy that I've carried from, believe it or not, my gacha days. I built my destiny brick by brick. For the caution tape, I just threw it into the upper body folder because I don't think I'll be moving it at all while it's clearly tapered to my body. Same for the wavefoam at the bottom of my pants. Maybe I'll change my mind about it one day, but for now, I really don't care. The last thing I'm going to cover super quickly for this section are Blockbench's variables and functions. The things that allow me to do this with my hands, this with my eyes, this with this guy's eyes, and so on and so forth. Blockbench allows you to create variables and connect it to a slider using its built-in slider function. Inside of the parentheses, you put in the slider's name in quotes, interval the slider will increase or decrease by, the starting amount, and then the ending amount. After you set that, you go select each individual folder and create a keyframe for scaling. While the keyframe is still selected, you assign the newly created variable to that mesh using the numbers within the range you included in that slider function beforehand. mistergriimm goes super in depth with this concept in his video about rigging faces in Blockbench. If you're interested in learning more about it too, I highly suggest that you watch this video. It'll be linked in the description below. Once you learn how to use variables, they're basically applicable everywhere, and you can switch things in and out with ease. Whatever idea you have, you can probably do it with variables. And honestly, with how easily the smallest inconvenience can make me crash out within seconds, I would say, try it. If I'm speaking so highly of something, you better believe it's good. And after all that, I finally reached me. Hair, eyes, hand gestures, textures, and all. Going through it all ended up being like super fun. I learned a couple things about modeling, I regained steam to keep on making videos, I found a pretty awesome program to top it all off. And, you know, walk with me. If you really think about it, keep walking with me. All it took for me to reach the stage of enlightenment was giving up. Listen, I jumped from Maya to Blender to Blockbench, and here I am frolicking the fields, happy as can be. Do you not see my line? All my life I've been told to persevere, even through the most debilitating task presented to humankind. And honestly, that hasn't got me anything. It wasn't until I threw in the towel that I was finally able to make this video and model. So, take it from me, words of the wise, if you feel like giving up, there's a good chance you probably should. You might not be able to bulldoze through like a closed door or two, but you can definitely jump out of an open window. That was an analogy. Please do not jump out of a window. Please. Instead, what you can do is turn on your PC, download Blockbench, because 3D modeling is freaking awesome. Thank me later, you're welcome. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see me engage in more silly projects, you should totally subscribe. If videos aren't your style, that's fine. I'm also active on Tumblr, where I share my works in progresses, my ramblings, and my fan or OC art. This blog is basically my stream of consciousness if you're into reading all of that. Godspeed if you do. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for sticking around this long. It really means a ton. I hope you have a stellar day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!